Hey guys, Dr. Chernoff here, and welcome back to Statistics for the New Social Scientist. So in this video, we're going to go out into the world, we're going to collect some data, and we're going to do some statistics. So I've been working with the intro stats students, and we've been talking about how it is you can use sample data to test bold claims about population proportions. So specifically, we've been talking about the proportion of people who wear masks while out in public. So we found this statistic by this organization called Statistia, and they claimed that 80% of Americans wear masks while out in public. So the students and I, we talked about this claim, and most of us agreed that we thought it was a little too high. So we've all been out in the world, we've been out on campus, we've been to the grocery store, and we all tend to think that this number is actually something a lot less. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to campus and we're going to set up a camera and we're going to record students, and we're going to measure whether or not they're wearing a mask out in public. And we're going to use this data to test that bold claim that 80% of Americans wear masks while out in public. So we're going to go to campus and we're going to observe social life. And we need to recognize that who it is we include in our sample can have a profound impact on the results we observe. So if we let my own personal biases dictate who I select and who I don't, then this might actually be a better explanation for our findings than the idea that this is just how campus life is. So to get around this, we need a clever trick. And that clever trick is really just some kind of raffle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a random number generator to decide who's in the sample and who's not. So in effect, I'm taking myself out of that equation. So I've got my random number generator here. So all I have to do is say, hey Google, pick a random number between 1 and 10. And Google is going to pick a random number between 1 and 10. And then this is going to be our jumping off point. 3. So Google has picked this number 3 for us. So here we can see we have the number 3. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to go to our observation location. We're going to see 3 people walk past us, and we're going to ignore them. And then for the 4th person, we're going to observe whether they're wearing a mask or not. And then we're going to let 10 more people go by. And then on that 11th person, we're going to observe whether they're wearing a mask or not. And then we're just going to continue this process until we've sampled several individuals on campus. And we'll use that for our database for testing this bold claim that 80% of all Americans wear masks out in public. All right, so we'll just sort of sit here for about an hour and see what happens.
About an hour?
Well, it looks like it's calmed down. So let's end it here.
End it here.
Okay, so here I've got some data entered into SPSS. So right now I'm just looking at the data that was gathered by one of the graduate students. So he made 35 observations. Now when it came to the observations he made, he had a 1. This indicated whether someone was wearing a mask. 2 indicated whether they were wearing a mask that just covered their mouth. And then 3 indicated whether or not they either had no mask on or it was just kind of covering their chin. So if we want to test this bold claim that 80% of all Americans wear masks out in public, what we can do is go to this Analyze, and then we can go down to Non-Parametric Tests, and then click One Sample. So what we'll do is we'll go to Fields, we'll make sure, in this case our variable masks is selected. We'll then go to Settings, we'll click on this Customize Tests, check the box next to Compare Observed Binary Probability to Hypothesized, and then we'll click the Options button. Now when it comes to the hypothesized proportion, this is where we enter in that 80%. So here we're going to enter in the 0.8. We'll then make sure that there's a check next to the box Klopper-Pearson, and then we'll check the radio button next to Specify Success Values. And here the success value is going to be a 1. So here we're looking at people who had the full mask on. So then we can click OK, and then we can click Run. And we'll get this sort of default output, but what we need is to double click on it. Because remember, you can't trust software. So SPSS is going to give you some results. So we want to use our flowchart to make sure that we're interpreting things correctly. So here I have a standardized test statistic of -7.8, and I have this asymptotic sig one-sided test of 0.000. So I go to my flowchart, and here notice that we're doing a test where the proposed proportion for the population is something different from 0.5. So in this case it's 0.8. We then have to look at the alternative test. So here we're doing a less than test because we're claiming that the true proportion in the population is less than what has been claimed. We then look at our standardized test statistic and we decide if it's positive or negative. So in our case it's negative. So this tells us that we can use the default value that's been provided by SPSS, and then that's going to be our correct p-value. So in this situation, our p-value is equal to this 0.000. So since the p-value is less than 0.05, we have sufficient evidence to reject the null hypothesis and accept the alternative hypothesis. So what we can say from this is that the statistic that was proposed by Statistia is wrong, and that the actual proportion of people who wear masks in public is going to be less than 80%. Okay guys, so that's it for the video. So we went to campus, we observed social life, and we recorded whether or not people were wearing masks. And we used that data to test that bold claim that 80% of Americans wear masks when out in public. And we were able to use a systematic random sampling technique. So while there's still, various elements of selection bias in this study, we were able to eliminate other forms of selection bias in terms of who was in our study and who we chose to observe by using this systematic random sampling technique. Okay guys, so that's it for the video, and remember, the rest of the assignment is now up to you.